This is the oldest BMX company in Germany. It started with a peg and still continues today. Ultra innovative, constantly pushing the boundaries of the sport with a huge focus on materials and design and having a stable of stallions that helped inform some of the designs of the most iconic mid-school flatland rigs ever. Named after a postal code, the one, the only KHE.
Hell yeah!
What up people, Derek here with benDy Tubes, and guess what? We are covering my favorite brand of all time, KHE. And as a first, we are actually sponsored by KHE, which is so rad. So thank you Thomas and KHE for the swag and just for the information to make this a better video. So first, why is KHE my favorite? Well, back at my peak, like maybe 05, 06, 07, I remember constantly seeing these beautiful, ultra high-end KHE bikes on Flatland Fuel, and I just fell in love. I always wanted one, I could rarely afford one, but put the brand on a pedestal because of the tech. The multiple completes under 20 pounds, which seemed nearly impossible at the time, and it just seemed that KHE had it figured out. Huge product portfolio, straight tubes, bins, gussets, little bit of everything to fit in most tastes. So that's why I really liked them. Also, a little disclaimer up front, I thought about doing like one episode that would be like an hour long, but I decided to split it up into probably 3 or 4 shorter episodes. The first one's gonna be this, the company, the background, and the frames up to like 2006. Then we'll do bikes from 2006 and forward. And finally in episode 3 or 4, we're gonna talk about the bits because KHE had some bangers over the year. So back in 1988, like 37 years ago, Thomas and Wolfgang Göring started making parts. Why? Because Thomas was a flatland fiend and he was going through a precision mechanical apprenticeship. So it's starting to make sense that he would make parts. And how good was Thomas at this thing we called Flatland? Dude made it to vice champion and 4th in the Flatland World Cup back in the day, which is wild. But back to making bits, Thomas and Wolfgang bought a lathe and started making their first product, the Dupeg. And then they dropped the grind disc and the first ever free coaster with sealed bearings, the Favergnügen, which is awesome. Plus these forks. Now without access to tube bending equipment, they machined some blocks, they cut some tubes, applied a whole bunch of brain power, and voila, the Schlachtschliff, or also named the Battleship fork. With proprietary pegs and dropouts, these were a zero offset axle protecting dream. All groundbreaking, well covered in some write-ups and links below. And when it came time to name this wonderful company, Thomas and Wolfgang looked to the postal code of the city that they live in for inspiration, Karlsruhe, or abbreviated as KHE. And like I said, I'll talk bits in video 3 or 4, but these bits got them moving in the right direction. Next, around 1993, KHE dropped the first of so many frames, the KHE. This is an old school freestyle bike that was capable of so many trickaroo-ha-has. Rocketed 500mm top tube, 365mm chainstays, and an awesome 74.5 degree head tube angle, this rig was co-developed with Albert Reitei. And I think it's really cool that the original roots of this company are in freestyle and flatland. Also, Albert rode this thing to world championships in the 1990s, so it has the pedigree of greatness. Plus, a little bit more about Albert. Dude was like a 7-time German champion, world champion in front of Chase G at one point. His nickname was actually the Physical Wonder because he studied physics and higher mathematics and won the Worlds in the same year. But this rig was actually fabbed up with spare Reynolds tubing from the French bike manufacturer Motobacan and manufactured in Minsk, Russia after a successful PVC prototype. Y'all, KHE was so scrappy and so dedicated to making these bikes. Talking designs, you have some top tube intersecting seat stays, a really rad twisted platform that swept around and down, think like Homeless Soul Bro, 1992 S&M dirt bike platform. Also check out this asymmetrical chainstay with a straight left side and a bent right side and a nice little trapezoidal gusset up top. In 95, the frame got a nice little gusset up front too, and 1 1/8 head tube. I think the Cotweasel ran from like 93 to maybe 95 or 96. And in 2019, KHE dropped a 30th anniversary version with the modified and yet to be named internal rotor system, press fit headset, exact same geometry, real cool offering of the retro recreation. And if you want a piece of history, the OG frames and bikes pop up from time to time on like ebay.co.uk, and there might be one right now actually. Next, we have the Skunk. Super similar to the Cotweasel. How similar, you ask? It's actually the exact same frame. Story is, KHE had the Cotweasel as their like high-end pro-level bike. Thomas had the idea to build a mid and lower tiered price, and they came out with the Pussy and the Skunk to fill that low and mid tier component package need. These use the same frame as the Cotweasel, but like I said, the component packages match their price targets. So in 1996, one of the most iconic flatland frames was dropped, the first signature frame of a one Jesse Puente, and that frame, the Premium Lager. In 96, this thing was such a far departure from the run-of-the-mill flat frames you see here, and y'all know the profile, like that huge formed slab gusset up front, opening up tons of room for those signature no-footed tomahawks. This thing had maybe like 3 or 4 generations. The first one being shown here, bent down to full-on platform with some Cotweasel-esque bent seat stays and wishbone chainstay from that down tube. Rear brakes with a clothesline length cable run all the way from the lugs placed on that tiny little gusset between the top and down tubes, bottom bracket just hanging out there. Absolutely sick offering in 96, and it's amazing that this frame came from this sketch sent via fax from Jesse. I mean, take a second to appreciate that. And it's really important to point out that the first version was offered as a frame or a complete, and it was the first freaking complete to have a free coaster, the one I mentioned earlier. Almost every flatland complete after this point had a free coaster because KHE did it first. So cool. So V2 around 1998 trimmed down the platform, straightened out the seat stays, and also this version got rid of the wishbone down at the chainstay. Dropouts changed a bit, more square from diamond. Great progression in design, for sure. Now the US didn't benefit from the internal gyro system too much, so I rarely see these for sale or reference on BMX Museum, but there was an additional version, let's call it a 2.5 or a 3, that had a System Diatech internal gyro system up front. Some of the cable routing adapted because you only need one cable coming out of that system, not the 2-2 or 2-1 with the traditional gyros. But one thing I do not condone is drilling holes in your frame. Don't do this. So this OG Premium Lager rode out till maybe about 01 with various frames and complete iterations. From the frame standpoint, that gusset pretty much stayed the same and consistent, but it looks like the seat stays dance around a bit. From straight to slope back, platform to smaller platform, this frame was nothing short of revolutionary. Then in 2013, there was another version, ultra limited, the Premium Lager Light shown here. I think like 3 were dropped in. OMG, bucket list frame for me for sure. Similar iconic gusset up front, straight tube, super sleek, amazing blend of mid school and new school just by adding that gusset. Euro bottom bracket, baby dropouts, internal headset. Seriously, like just a wow of a bike. If you have one, let's talk. Honestly. But bringing it way back, jumping around on the dates to 2000, we got 2 rad rides, the Easy Rider and the Goldfinger, and we are cementing KHE as a flatland powerhouse. Starting with the Easy Rider, this is a pretty unique bike, honestly. Aluminum. Early generation has the System Diatech I mentioned earlier. This flame-shaped gusset off the head tube is wild. The double bolt integrated seat post clamp, these machine chainstays, and seat stay yoke are legit. Like, especially the chainstay yoke. what a stamp of ownership on this bike. Sold as a complete, this was an interesting offering at the time for sure. 19.2 top tube, 853 millimeter wheelbase with a 75-degree head tube angle, solid flatland dims, absolutely. Then in 02, we got the Easy Rider 2, shown here in black. Frame changed a ton up front with the F-set internal rotor replacing the system Diatec, and the F-set was actually KHE's proprietary technology, which is cool to see the progress and innovation on this internal gyro. Still aluminum, big old gusset up front, think like premium lager-ish, similar yoke at the chainstay. This time the relief cutout is the K logo instead of the whole KHE. I mean, this bike has some serious goodies too. Alloy fill Dolan bars, alloy forks, nice chonky mid-school rig here, and like I said, I think it was offered as a complete, so that's a legit complete right there. Like I mentioned, in 2000, we got two bikes that dropped, the Easy Rider and this mid-school rig, the Goldfinger. This first version has a bent down tube, double gussets, and F-set equipped color coordinated piece of sickness. 4130 steel frame, white alloy forks, Geraldo bars. I don't know if this is all original, but this thing is so clean, y'all. Like, I love the bent down tube, love the gold accents. I mean, more to come on the dims here in a second. Now in 04, surprise, there is a version that I had no idea existed. Complete, check, really similar to the 2000 version, but it has this trick gusset here that I haven't seen before. Like I said, kind of like Powell Bikes-esque with a slight bend at the down tube with the gusset near the bottom bracket. Like, really cool offering. Don't know much about it, but found the picture, thank you Thomas, and really cool to learn about. Then, just like the Easy Rider, there was a second version in maybe 05, 06. And this one is also designed by Gerardo Laurentino, I think. And this thing is solidly mid-school. Chromoly frame once again, but it's switched to white Tanaka forks up front instead of those alloys. Smaller tubes, cleaner look for sure. This is a first look at their 06 designs, and man, that is when they legit took off. Dims are kind of wild though, check this out. 461 millimeter top tube, 344 millimeter chainstay, a really steep 76-degree head tube angle. And the one thing that really stands out though, you can see it, I confirmed it, this wildly steep seat tube angle, 79 degrees. I can't think of another frame that had that steep of a seat tube angle, seriously. So those are the two frames that dropped in 2000. Now we go into 01, KHE got Galactic and dropped the Cosmic. More freestyle than flat, honestly. It was a bike, here's a picture. Moving on. From what I gather, maybe 03, 02, there's not a lot happening. You know, frames are being released, but I think there's a lot of testing and development going on because in 04, 05, KHE absolutely made the frames rain down. Now, the first one, not flat, but just want to call it out as a cool story. KHE wanted to come out with a dirt rig. There was an actress named Dolly Buster at the time, and the team thought a cool name would be the Dirty Buster. So they signed a deal to name this bike the Dirty Buster, and this actress is probably one of the few actresses to have their own signature bike. Pretty wild story and excellent just like being edgy and like getting out there-ness from KHE. And I want to call out my signature frame, the Derek, but they actually misspelled it. But more to come here in a little bit, just jumping around a lot. Back to Flatland, maybe 04, 05, we have the second signature frame from Jesse Puente, the Flatland. This was sold as a complete with a gap tube gusset up front, Geraldo bars, F-set, chromoly frame, stuff like that. 19.7 top tube, looks like some shortened standard offset forks, wishbone at the seat stay and the chain stay, pierced top tube at the seat tube. This looks like a legit frame. Plenty of space up front for moving around, but maybe like a mid-tier component package versus their ultra high-end top tier that they showed later on. Around the same time, we have the KHE Messerschmitt. 19.7 top tube steel frame, F-set, super similar to the Flatland. How similar, you ask? The Messerschmitt is the Japanese market Flatland whip. So Flatland, Messerschmitt, fraternal twins, totally. The idea for the name actually came from their distributor in Japan. There was a famous World War II German airplane named the Messerschmitt, and the distributor liked the name. So legal cleared the idea, and this is what you get. They even have like German flag colors to represent the history of KHE, which is super rad. Finally, frame 4 of 4, dropping in 04 or 05, one of their most unique bikes, the Unique Diamond. This is actually the next iteration of the Easy Rider, according to Thomas. This was another aluminum piece of hardware. Up front, they went away from the System Diatech and went with the FSAT, kept the double bolt built-in seat post clamp, relief machine dropouts, a little bit different machined stay yoke, square stays, stuff like that. Instead of the 2 straight tubes on the V1 Easy Rider and the slab gusset on the V2 Easy Rider, this one had the same gap tube gusset as the Flatland and the Messerschmitt at the time. So as I mentioned, in 04 there were about 4 frames that dropped. The Derrick, the Unique, the Messerschmitt, and the Flatland. I mentioned the Derrick because in 06 we got the Derrick LT. And I think this was probably a Europe or Japan only market bike. It looks like it's set up for a beginner with those tiny bars, but it's targeted to get people into Flatland. You can see it actually had a pretty legit parts list. Looks like some alchemy pegs, short stem, short offset forks, nice mid-school Flatland frame too with that bent down tube. So 06 Derrick LT, I could be way off on the dates. I can't find a lot of references to it, but that really wraps up the extent of the pre-06 KHE model lineup. And y'all, that is your start to KHE. But more importantly, their early Flatland offerings, like I mentioned. Folks, this could have been the whole of the company, and that would have been huge. Like, I just covered 10 frames, completes, aluminum, steel, multiple generation, huge list of pros, but this is just the start. But I call out 06 because that is when the craziness actually, like, the stuff just hits the fan. Everything gets turned up to 11, and I can't wait to cover KHE Part 2, where we talk about everything from 06 and forward, tons of frames, tons of names, totally insane. Be on the lookout out for KHE Video 2 in a month or two, I'm hoping. But as always, Derek, benDy Tubes, thanks to our sponsor KHE, and Dankeschön to all the viewers. I'm out.